What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about Robert Eggers' NOSFERATU. As it's been told before, this is the gothic tale of obsession between a haunted young woman and the terrifying vampire infatuated with her, causing untold horror in its wake. Now, this is written and directed by Robert Eggers, the visionary filmmaker who has brought us The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman. And I've been truly excited to see an adaptation done to this particular vampire since its announcement back in 2015, even before Eggers started to make a name for himself in Hollywood. And I'm gonna be honest, it's shameful to admit, but I have not seen the original 1922 silent film of NOSFERATU, nor its other iterations and remakes that have followed after, but I've kind of seen this similar story through its borrowed original source material, like anything done by Bram Stoker, really. And I knew that I was going into this with fresh eyes and knowing that if anyone could do a gothic tale adaptation to this particular story, it's going to be Eggers. I want to give a special thanks and appreciation to my Hawaii Film Critics Society because I was very fortunate enough to receive a digital screener 3 weeks prior to its theatrical release. And just like the other Instagram influencers and YouTube content creators, I too get to be one of the very lucky few to check this out and report before Christmas. So excited. And after finally watching the movie, I can honestly say that Robert Eggers has outdone himself once again. This is an erotic and tantalizing nightmare of obsession that really invites its players as much as its audience to explore the darkness within ourselves as well as the demons beyond our understanding. Eggers' bold take on an all-too-familiar tale feels revitalizing and fresh, complemented by an impeccably talented ensemble, harrowing sound design, and an immaculately beautiful visual feast in every frame. Getting into the script, it's a pretty straightforward plot when you take into account all the monster films that have spun a genre of its own through the years. You got the hero, the damsel, the monster, the love, death, and all the horrific consequences that came with their desires and goals, which will lay waste to everything and everyone in its path. And when it comes down to Eggers writing his characters, he's just mastering the accuracy of dialect when it came to the time period that's taking place. If you're accustomed to hearing dialogue that is written along the lines by someone like Jane Eyre, George R.R. Martin, Edgar Allan Poe, William Shakespeare, or J.R.R. Tolkien, you'll be fine as long as you got subtitles on. When it comes down to some of their dialogue, they could easily say stuff like first thing in the morning or at the crack of dawn, but instead, they'll say something like at the crow of cock. Getting into the production design, as much as I would love to say that the visual effects team did a lot of the heavy lifting, it was breathtaking to actually see real locations. Come across like Count Orlok's castle to the streets of London was just prestigious, and I think that Eggers had a really good and competent costume design team, especially with the way that they choose to dress each and every individual. And I gotta say, I wish we got to see more of the castle, a little more of that graveyard that Nicholas Hoult comes across, and as something simple as setting up a bedroom scene where it is just pitch black and then the moon suddenly pierces through the room trying to play tricks on you with the shadows and everything like that. It was just a visual treat. This leads me into the spectacular cinematography that had me transfixed and enamored from start to finish. Every single frame, whether it was something as simple as our characters getting from point A to B, was a work of art. It was a masterpiece that was put on display with our main subject in the middle and everything else that complemented it in the background. The contrast of day and night was definitely paid an homage to that original silent film where the movie looked to be black and white, but there's a little bit of that blue hue, that little darker tint that just conveys the dead of night. And then there's that singular shot from the trailer where Count Orlok's hand and long nails just kind of reaches over and casts a shadow over the entire London city. And that was just one of the single greatest shots in cinema this year. The sound design and score was seductively haunting, with sound being the more vital component that stands out amongst what makes its latest iteration superior. A lot of the strong imagery is heavily implicated and accompanied by such a pit of dread that feels like your stomach is about to be pulled through your throat. One of the more precise examples that I would have to bring up would have to be Nosferatu himself, Count Orlok. It's his heavy breathing, it's his Romanian accent, and it's his convictions that have completely floored me from where I sat. I mean, every little line that he spoke just gave me goosebumps, and as subtle as his introduction was, I never want to wake up in the middle of the night and hear that breathing, that voice of his just emerge from the shadows. Like, fuck that. Getting into the talent here, it is a stacked ensemble. And I gotta admit, I have totally forgotten that Kraven the Hunter's Aaron Taylor Johnson and Deadpool and Wolverine's Emma Corrin were making appearances in this movie, and they do a pretty good job here. We also got Ralph Ineson, who is making his third collaboration along Eggers, and he has a surprisingly substantial supporting role in this alongside Willem Dafoe. And speaking of Dafoe, he too is making a third collaboration with Eggers, and he is delivering a fantastical, over-the-top, and colorful performance as Professor Albin Eberhard von Franz. Oh God, that was just a handful. And yeah, that's pretty much the designated Van Helsing, if you will. Nicholas Hoult as Thomas Hutter impressed the hell out of me. I mean, he's really come a long way. Now, I haven't had the chance to check out his other recent works like The Order or Juror Number 2, but a lot of his one-on-one scenes with Bill Skarsgård had me at the edge of my seat with genuine expressions of fear and despair. And when it comes to Lily Rose Depp, she may have started off her career under her father's shadow, but whatever she has done here will forever echo into her future endeavors. And as the character of Ellen Hutter, she is the longing, the appetite, the obsession of the infamous vampire Nosferatu. Her performance goes from 10 to 100 with her spectrum of emotions and physicality, a mixture of dread, arousal, and possession. And when it comes down to her actions of how she began her supernatural connection with the Count to the way she decides to handle it may divide a lot of viewers, but it really adds a lot of layers to her character other than having a typical damsel. Last but not least, the Prince of Darkness, Death Incarnate, the Count himself, Nosferatu, played by Bill Skarsgård. And I gotta say, they did a pretty good job with the marketing with hiding his true identity, because that little jump scare in the trailer was just as effective as it was advertised. And when it comes to Skarsgård, he just is unrecognizable. He just disappears into the titular role behind the makeup, the prosthetics, and even his performance. I mean, if you told me that Bill Skarsgård wasn't the one who played Count Orlok, I'd probably believe you too. Behind the shadows, behind the sound design, once we finally get a clear look at what Nosferatu really looks like, it may divide audiences about the different approach they decided to go in the final design. I mean, personally, it is far from the iconic vampire look that I was hoping for, but once we get to the later half of the movie where he becomes completely unhinged, vulnerable, and just the way that he comes face to face with Ellen, his performance completely swept me away. Overall, I'm still kind of playing it in my head about what this version of the movie would have looked like had the original cast members that were originally attached stayed on. I mean, this movie did get delayed as far as production went. I mean, but we could have got Doug Jones as Nosferatu. We could have got Harry Styles as Thomas Hutter. And personally, Ellen Hutter, played by Anya Taylor-Joy, would have been phenomenal. And you know what? If they ever do decide to release this on home video, I would love to see a cut of this movie where it was just completely black and white. I mean, that would be cool. I know the Academy is very well known to exclude horror films in their nomination list, but if there was ever an opportunity when it comes to the criteria, I think Nosferatu would check every box in that entire aspect and to be an actual Oscar contender. And when it comes down to Eggers and his ambitious vision, I think the gothic classic vampire tale is intoxicatingly a knockout and a very appetizing masterpiece. All right, guys, that's all I got to share about that movie. Go ahead and check it out on the biggest screen possible in theaters Christmas Day. I'm Jaren Nawag. Look forward to more reviews, and I want to thank you guys again for taking some time out of your day to hear me talk some movies. I'll see you guys at the theater. In the meantime, happy holidays and take care.